happy to be here. I thank Carol for having me. How many of you dance here? Most of you, not all, but most. How many of you saw the article in the newspaper and you just want to be discovered and become a star? A couple of people.
That second part.
Become a star? Well, there are some things you can do to become a star, and there are a lot of other things that you will do if you ever do leave this place. If you leave Kentucky, and this isn't just a fantasy, this becomes like what you want to do. You move to New York, you move to LA, and you actually, pursue dancing, acting, singing, and that becomes your life. You'll fail. Now, I can't say that with such certainty. I won't be able to say that with such certainty about 45 minutes from now, because you'll know stuff that most people don't know. This is the only place, I don't mean necessarily Carol's studio, but Carol's studio here at this time with me is the only place you're going to hear the kinds of things I say. You'll have heard some of it, but this is the only time you're going to have somebody explain to you why certain people make it and why they don't. Because I've been around a long time, and I've watched this and watched this and watched this. And when you're curious about something, you get good at it. And I've been very curious to know why so many talented, well-trained, self-motivated, passionate, beautiful, well-connected kids can't get hired often enough to make a living as a performer. It was a mystery. And most people say, well, there's just so much competition, there's so much rejection, and all this. Doesn't explain it. Because of some interesting statistics. 10% of Actors Equity, you know what Actors Equity is? It's a union that represents stage actors. It's like Screen Actors Guild represents film actors. And 10% of these unions, to get into these unions, by the way, you have to be the best they've ever seen. Because you have to be hired for Broadway or TV or film. There's no audition process, it's not who you know, you don't pay dues and sign up. You have to book a job, big job, Broadway, or speaking role, television show, movie. Then the union comes walking after you with the paperwork. You have to join. So these are the best actors, dancers, and singers they can find. And every year they announce what percentage are working. As performers, it's always about 10%. The 40 years I've been aware of what's going on. Almost 50 years. About 10%. And people say, well, that's because there's so few jobs. And then I did a little digging and I realized, no, there's enough union jobs out there to employ about 30 or 40% of the union. Maybe more. Which means, if it's constantly that figure that they say, and I believe them, I mean, it would be in the union's interest to say more of our members are working. So if anything, it might be less than 10%. But it means that if there's enough jobs for 30 or 40% or more, and only 10% are working, that means the same 10% tend to get most of the jobs, and the same 90% tend not to. And that's a very interesting thing. And you kind of notice it sometimes. You see actors, they recycle, actors using different series. They're always in different series. People they use all the time. That's not just a fluke, that's how it is. There are people who work a lot in this industry and there are people who don't. And the people who don't include people who've been on Broadway. They have actors, AEA, that means they've been on Broadway or the equivalent on their resume. They've had big speaking roles. They know everybody in town, usually represented by a big agent. They want it with all their heart. They'd much rather be up on a Broadway stage again than waiting on tables or doing temp jobs, which is what they're doing most of the time. So there's no lack of self-motivation or passion. They are talented as can be. They've been on Broadway. They're very well trained. They're always training. And they can't figure it out. And they try for years, as you will, if you just go off and assume the following. I have heard lectures and read books and watched videos where the advice goes something like, you've got to move to New York or LA, you got to get a place to live, you have to train, you never stop training, you have to take classes, you have to develop your talent, you have to meet the right people, it's all about who you know. You've got to get a good agent, you got to build your resume, you got to persevere. And try to get yourself in the right place at the right time until you get that lucky break. And doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound intuitively logical? What else could you do? None of that stuff's going to save you, because everybody does all that, and they're all failing. The whole 90% of the population of union members, with all their credentials and everything else, they all have great agents, they all know people, everything. The luck thing is interesting. You do have to be in the right place at the right time. It's called auditions. You have to go on them. And if you go into an audition, you're in the right place at the right time. It's the only place I know. Casting director doesn't take the headshots and pictures of all the, actors in the lobbies and waiting rooms, put them up on the board. His assistants blindfold him, spin him around 3 times. I think it's 3 times for equity, 4 times for SAG. Give him a bunch of darts. He faces the pictures, throws the darts. And whichever picture gets hit in the middle, that's who gets the part that day. It's just luck. Think we would pay somebody $3,000 or $4,000 a day to play pin the tail in the headshot? That moral of the story is either get a really big headshot or realize that there's something else going on in there that you don't know about. Everybody has an agent. Nobody's being sent on auditions. I've never heard of an actor say, I can't get an agent. Never heard that. Assuming they've been around for, at least 6 months or so and trying. But what I hear every day of the week, it's slow. My agent isn't sending me out. And I can explain to you how that happens, but finding an agent is not a big deal. Taking classes is not a big deal. You've got wonderful classes everywhere. You've got them here, you've got them in New York, you've got them. There's no shortage of training. Everybody's training. Everybody's technique is fabulous. If I took somebody who had been on a Broadway stage 10 years ago as a swing and had them dance here, you'd be like amazed at how good they are. Have you seen a Broadway show? They're good. If you sat behind the table at a Broadway audition, you would think you're at a Broadway show. It's humbling how good these people are. Everybody's amazing and unemployed. Talented, desire, passion. You hear, you have to want this more than anything. Yeah, that's different. So this is a reality check because that's what people believe. If I want it badly enough, if I persevere long enough, if I meet the right people, if I just get good enough, if I get enough credits on my resume. Do you understand? And I'm here to kind of dispel that for you. Carol and I kind of have a conspiracy here to tell you how it really works. And if you like what you hear at the end of this, you should thank the heck out of her. You understand? Because not many people get to hear this. This is not a typical dance studio talk. This talk I'd give more in high schools. The most important part of the casting process is not the audition. Most important part of the casting process is the interview. The audition, everybody's great. Everybody's better than we need them to be. Do you understand? The interview tells us something else. A casting director in New York, an independent theatrical casting director, does get $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a day. And the reason for that is because they can't be wrong. The launch song in Annie, song where the lead character comes down stage and says, "This is what I want." Madame Rose says, "I'm going to get my kids and get out." Some people. Pippin says, "I'm going to find my corner of the sky." And he sings, "Maybe. Maybe my parents are here doing this. Maybe they're doing that. But what? I'm going to find them." You understand? Every song has to have that objective expression. Every musical has to have that song that expresses an objective. And he comes downstairs and says, I'm going to find my parents as an objective. What happens if she says that and the audience is thinking deep down inside, we don't care? She's not reaching us. Let her stay an orphan. She doesn't deserve parents. We don't care. If that kid comes downstage and the audience does not root for her, the audience does not embrace her, the audience does not believe her, the audience doesn't like her, and that's the casting decision, do you understand that that's a multi-million-dollar irreversible mistake? They can't reshoot the movie. They can't tell the audience to come back in the Broadway show. Come back tomorrow night, we're going to put a better kid and you'll like it this time. Watch the show again. It's on us. Do you understand? It's done. which means the casting director cannot be wrong. So they hire, the producers, these very perceptive people. And if you took a survey and you asked them, how soon do you know whether or not you're interested in somebody? And they will all tell you before they even get their whole body in the room. I can look at anybody in this room, any kid who I can see, and I can tell what you're like right now. Any volunteers? Okay, you. Oh, this is the one over here. I think you're very adventurous. I think you pride yourself in kind of being an individual. You're not a follower. You don't like to do that. I think that you're a rascal. You like to press boundaries, see how far you can go. You like challenges. That's what I think. And I think that you're not afraid of getting into a little trouble, which is cool. I have a saying, if it doesn't hurt you and it doesn't hurt anybody else and it doesn't get you in big trouble, do it. Because that's a lot of wiggle room. You can do a lot of things and get into a little trouble. That's okay because, it's something that ultimately is worthwhile. Anybody else want me to tell what they're like? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe. You my child. I don't know if you were shy when you were little or if you become, no, this is you, baby. Yeah, you. I don't know if you were shy when you were little or you're becoming more shy now. I think you're very hard on yourself. I think you're very sensitive, self-conscious. You compare yourself with other kids all the time. Not always happy with what you see. It's a struggle. Very, very sensitive. And very important to you that people like you. It's really difficult for you if people get mad at you or don't like you. That's a very hard thing for you. That's what I think. I'll do one more. I want a skeptic. I need a skeptic. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. My mother said to pick this. I'll do a boy. I guess a boy. I think you're very warm. I think you're very caring. I think you're basically very confident. I think you're probably a great friend. I think you're a lot of fun. I think you do follow that kind of thing. Get you in a little trouble, it's okay. Because I think nothing bad, just little stuff, And, but you're very nervous. There's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of fear, and you fight that all the time. You cover it with that "don't hurt me" smile, but I think there's a lot of anxiety going on sometimes. That's what I think. So if somebody can just look at you and they know stuff about you, imagine it a 5-minute interview. Because interviews take place in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes you're auditioning and the casting person asks, "Where did you get those shoes?" He doesn't care. He just wants to see how you react. Or there's another guy I know, what's his name? Mike Roscoe. Does a lot of music videos. He sits out in lobbies and waiting rooms and watches kids and parents interact with each other. That was your interview. Most of the time they do what I do. They sit behind the table and they ask you questions. They don't ask you stupid questions. What's your favorite color? Blue? You must be spiritual. No. They ask you personal questions about your brothers, your sisters, your mothers, your fathers, your pets, your hobbies, your boyfriends, your girlfriends. They don't listen to the answers because they have a much more reliable source of information about what you really like and how people will react to you. The reason I was able to read these people the way any casting director can, any professional interviewer can, is their body language, the look in their eye, their energy level, all the nonverbal stuff you can't control, even what they're wearing and how they wear their hair. There's so much information that you walk into a room with that you can't disguise, that the decision is done before you even get to the table. You understand? That's something major that you need to understand. We know before you say any of the clever things you're ready to say, before we look at all the impressive things on your resume, we know how that audience, which by the way is the most expensive part of a production budget, getting people into seats, getting people to turn on that channel, that show, advertising, public relations, PR, that's the most expensive part of a production budget. So when you walk in the room, we're asking ourselves, how will that audience, those viewers that we spent millions of dollars getting into those seats, how will they react to you? And that's all that matters. This is about you. This is about stuff you can't control. This is about stuff that's not on your resume. It's not about what you say in the interview. We've heard it all. They charm and sparkle and bubble and flirt and tell jokes. You understand? These are actors. And some of them are brilliant. And they're boring because they all say the same stuff all the time. Flop sweat, you know what that is? You're trying really hard to make somebody, react, laugh, and they don't. So you try harder, you begin to sweat, and you try harder. You see it with stand-up comics sometimes. It's an old vaudeville term. Look up vaudeville. Homework assignment. Anyhow, flop sweat. You see these people working so hard to be impressive. Everything in the world except imagining, we know what you're like. Just answer the questions. Best interview advice in the world is not walk in with positive energy and a big smile and a firm handshake and look them in the eye and drop their name into a sentence or two and ask some good questions. That's terrible advice. That's how to be fake. My suggestion about interview advice is listen, because actors walk in and they have things they want to say, little sound bites they want to give us, So they're half listening to what we say, looking for an opportunity to slip that clever thing and they want to say. So my first advice is listen. Second, talk a lot. 3, tell the truth. I promise you, there's not an interview in the world who would disagree with that. It's the best interview advice. Listen to the questions, talk a lot, tell the truth. You understand? The interview is everything. The interview is about you. There's nothing you can do in the world to prepare yourself for someone like me that's going to make me think that there's something different about you that's not true. Comprende?
Can I ask a question?
You can.
You said that a lot of times those who don't make it were on Broadway. To a lot of people, Broadway, that's making it.
Yes, but it doesn't pay the bills for the next 20 years.
That it doesn't.
So making it to me means you stay there. It's your career. Because a lot of people would disagree with you. They say, yes, I did this when I was 18, I did this when I was 22, I did this when I was 12. And life is not pretty now for many of them. Because they haven't figured out why people hire people. So I will tell you, grasshoppers. This is all about who you is. And I have, did I say that wrong? That's how they taught us in Harvard. This is about what it is, what it ain't. I'll tell you what it is, what it really, really is, and you tell me what it ain't, what it ain't. I wrote that. Some girls stole it from me. Number 1, suppose you have a sweater, shirt, toy, pet, something you like. Do you let people see it? I have a new puppy, but you can't look. Is that what you do? You paranoid people. If you have something you like, it's yours, you feel good about it. In general, on this planet, we show it to people. You understand? We let people see it, if we like it. If we don't have a reason not to. Do you understand? There might be extenuating circumstances. So I'll preface it. In general, if you have something you like, you have something you feel good about, you show it to people. So here's the trick. Suppose that thing is you. Suppose I ask you questions about you. And deep down inside, you're not that happy with you. How open with me will you be? Here I am trying to figure out what you like. I need to know. And there you are believing deep down, if this guy finds out what I'm really like, he won't pick me. How might you behave? You think people walk into important interviews and go, hi, I'm just bad. Think they say that? People feel that? All of you do at one time or another, some more than others. What happens to those feelings? Cover them up, and you say everything that you imagine we would like to hear. There's even a showbiz joke about that. How tall are you? How tall would you like me to be? You understand? If you don't like you, deep down, you got a big problem. Welcome to the 90%. And the value of this talk is not so much saying you got to like yourself, because a lot of people tell you that. I cringe when I hear somebody say to a kid, feel good about yourself. And my next question is, well, what if they don't? You can't change feelings. Somebody ever come up to you and say, hi, I'm really mad at this. Oh, you shouldn't feel that way. There's no reason. Thank you. I feel much better now. All those feelings are gone, and I'm happy now. Thank you. That was great advice. Or do you want to, take a fork and, You can't change what you're feeling. Your feelings are like vampires. Suppose a vampire comes in your house and says, hi, I'm in your house. And you tell the vampire to get out. You say, go, get out, leave. The vampire will eat you. That's what they do. Suppose you turn your back on the vampire, put your fingers in your ears, sing the I'm ignoring you song. The vampire will still eat you. But if you can somehow hold out to the morning, you hold out till the sun comes out, bathes the room with brightness, covers the vampire with light, depending on which movie you've seen. What would happen to the vampire exposed to all that light? Yeah, burn, turn to dust, right? Sparkle. Your feelings are like that. And this is a very difficult thing to do, because when you have bad feelings, you don't want to dwell on them. You naturally want to kind of ignore them, or you want to push them out of your head, but you have that vampire thing happening. You can't. You have to put light on them. You have to be aware of those feelings. You have to practice being aware of those feelings. You have to practice being aware of all your feelings, especially your feelings about you. Because that kind of emotional self-awareness, it does two things for you. Number one, it makes you much less likely to be fake. And real is the great word in this business, by the way. Genuine, real, open. Everybody loves that. There's a famous quote by a big producer, Mike Nichols. He said, if it's real, it will work. If it's not, it will stink. And being self-aware, how you feel, and practicing that so you're centered and aware, that's magnetic. You can feel, it's like palpable. You can touch the tension behind the table. People really pay attention. They lean forward. That's the first thing that happens when you're being emotionally self-aware. The second thing that happens is those feelings begin to lose their power. It's like putting light on the vampire. You understand? That's the first great truth of getting to where some of you are imagining you want to go. Is that emotional self-awareness? It's the one thing all these brilliant people don't bring into the room. Do you understand? There's another thing they have to bring into the room. It's called their body. And most of them are a mess. Especially the kids. Your generation is wacky. They walk in bouncing off the walls. They're over-caffeinated, hyper, or their pancreas kicked in and now they're dragging their tired butts across the room. They're lethargic. They have no energy. Faces are broken out. They're dehydrated. They're anemic. They're sniffing. They're coughing. They're a mess. If you don't feel really good at an important interview, don't you sort of have to be fake? People walk into an interview and they don't feel well, something hurts, something always hurts, headaches. They walk in and go, hi, I feel like garbage today. I really want this part, I'll do a good job for you. And they sneeze all over the table. What do? They suck it up, sparkle, bubble, shake. Can we tell? See the lack of life in their eyes. We can hear the sniffing and the coughing, see the bumps under the makeup, how they get out of a chair. And we assume this person's not going to have enough energy to make it through the rehearsal period. This person's probably going to be fake all the time, covering up how they really feel. This person's probably going to get sick and infect the rest of my cast. And out they go. These unhappy, unhealthy, very talented people. And they recite the unemployed actors litany. Would you like to hear the unemployed actors litany? Like the chant? It's always the same. That casting director hates me. My agent sent me on the wrong call. I don't have enough credits in my resume. I'm too tall. I'm too short. God wasn't smiling at me today. It just wasn't meant to be. And they have no clue that just what they had for breakfast that morning, just their blood sugar level, might have made a big difference on how they came across. If you don't get up every morning and have a big protein breakfast, you're going nowhere as a performer. If that's not a habit, forget about it. Give it up. If you don't eat green vegetables during the day, if you don't cut your sugar down to an occasional treat, it's not happening. Give it up. You will never have the energy or the appearance to convince enough of us to hire you often enough to earn a living in this business. Do you understand? We call these people the unhappy, the unhealthy, and the unemployed. Unhappy, unhealthy, unemployed. And they can't figure out how those three things connect to each other. If you don't eat a big protein breakfast, lots of green vegetables, cut the sugar down, cut the caffeine down, drink more water, wash your hands, get more sleep. If you can't do that on a regular basis, it's not going to happen. No matter who you know, how many classes you take, and how much you want it. Do you hear me? That's number 2. This is hard stuff to do. This is how you make it. By doing things that are hard that way. People think the hard stuff is going to New York or LA and going and taking classes and going on auditions and waiting for the phone to ring. That's not hard. What's hard is getting hired. You get hired because you become somebody people want to hire. If you don't become somebody people want to hire, how you feel about yourself, how you take care of yourself, you don't get hired. That's the definition of dancing. Definition of dance is being who you are, placed in a situation created by a choreographer. Which means if we can't tell who you are when you dance, you're useless to us. Acting, same thing, being who you are, placed in a situation created by a writer. Singing, being who you are, placed in a situation created by a lyricist. When you dance, you sing, you act, we have to see who you are. And how important this is evident by something called artistic differences. You'll have like a choreographer who will come in and say, I want to use this kid because she should be the lead because she embodies my vision of my work. She's got this great technique and everything else. Stretch and range. And producer says, yeah, but people don't really relate to her. She kind of leaves people cold. There's nothing, she's not warm. We want you to use this other kid. The choreographer freaks out because the other kid doesn't dance that well. Producer says, then dummy down your choreography. Work with her every day until she's good enough because she's the one who's going to sell tickets. The next day you read in the trade paper, so-and-so is no longer affiliated with the production of such and such because of artistic differences with the producer. They have to choose between that very expensive audience and your technique. Your technique doesn't stand a chance. How well you make those people feel about you, that's what does it. That's the magic. Another reason for that is because casting is the last thing they do. By the time they cast a show, they've raised all the money, they hired all the people, they put full-page ads in the media, Los Angeles Times, New York Times. They got to find their people. If they don't, they got to give all the money back and tell the media they were just kidding. If you want to see flop sweat, watch casting directors and producers after a long audition, like a week or 2 before rehearsals are scheduled to begin, and they can't find who they need. And you're paying one of those people, at least, a casting director, to know how the viewers are going to react to each of these kids that come in. And that's you coming in. You want to become somebody people want to hire. You got to be self-aware. You got to know how you feel about you. You got to be honest with yourself about those feelings. You got to take care of yourself. There's 2 other things you have to do. You cannot have a serious boyfriend or girlfriend until you're 25 or 30. What did I say, 30 last time?
You said 25, and then after 25, it has to come second.
Yeah, I revised it lately based on my own experience with a young lady about a week ago. You can have a serious boyfriend or girlfriend when you're 25, but it has to come second to the business until you're 30. Once you're 30, then you can probably handle both. Want to know why I say that? When you have a serious boyfriend or girlfriend and you're young, you cannot help it. You have no choice. You don't have the power. You won't need other things as much. You will not try as hard. You will not go as far. Because when you have to choose, it will always be him or her. Always. It does not work. It's sort of like, imagine a freezing cold room in Radcliffe, Kentucky. What is that for you people, like 40? All right, suppose it's 10 degrees, it's freezing. Imagine 2 people in a bedroom, and they're both wearing pajamas, and they're both in bed. One of them is just wearing pajamas, and that's it. The other person is covered with blankets and comforters and has an electric heater. Suddenly, for some reason, it's an emergency. They both have to get out of bed right away, like immediately, life or death. Who's going to jump out of bed first? You think the person covered with blankets and comforters is going to throw them off and jump out?
No.
That's your boyfriend or your girlfriend. You will never get out of that metaphorical bed as fast as somebody who does not have that kind of dependency. So, to entertain myself, I cataloged the responses that all of these young men and young ladies gave me when I gave them this advice, when I said, yes, I understand you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but it's not going to work. So I'll tell you what they all say. You ready? Number 1, this is different. Number 2, you don't understand. Number 3, he's very supportive of my career. We can make this work. Number 4, but I love him. Number 5, he's my best friend. Number 6, that's very interesting. We'll have to think about it. And about 3 to 6 months later, either he is gone or she is gone, or the career or all of it. You can date. You can go out. But the moment you find it difficult to imagine your life without him or her, that's the first sound of your career going over a cliff. Because it's not different. I do understand it does not work. And that, kiddies, is one of the sacrifices you have to make in your journey to becoming somebody people want to hire. Somebody who's independent, who makes decisions on their own. In this business, you can have God, you can have your family, you can have as many non-romantic friends as you want, and your career. Anything about a boyfriend? That's it. That's number 3. Number 4, you have to politely and respectfully ignore the advice of anyone who ever tells you this. This is the most destructive career advice anybody could give you. If it was a college course, it would be called How to Fail 101. And it goes something like this. I hope this isn't like... Quote, there's so much competition and rejection in the performing arts field that you should have something more realistic and practical to fall back on. Unquote. Have you heard that before? People ever said that to you? Parents, you ever say that to your kids? No backup plan. You know what's worse than starving and struggling in your 20s towards your dream? Waking up at age 30 or 35, realizing you never did what you really wanted to do and it's too late. People get sick over that, like physically sick. That's a hole you'll never be able to fill. You see, the problem is, working hard is not enough. Working hard and working smart, doing the things I told you tonight, that's not enough either. But if you work hard and you work smart and it's something you love, you'll be unstoppable. That's at the core of becoming somebody people want to hire. Somebody who's smart, intelligent, working hard, being responsible, making the right choices, and following their dream. My God, you're unstoppable. That's irresistible. That's the person we want to hire. That's what it takes. 4 simple things. 4.5. The half is never base important decisions on fear. Never base important decisions on fear. You have to know the difference between healthy fears and unhealthy fears. You understand? Healthy fears, self-destructive behavior, hurting other people, following bad peer pressure. You should be afraid of that. Unhealthy fears, basing career decisions on fear. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I'll make it. There's too much competition. It's the beginning of a very wrong decision. Got it? Any questions? Learn something? You can tell the future. You just look at yourself 3 months from now and see if you're doing the things I talked about. If you are, you're going to make it. If you're not, you won't. Somebody asked about being a star. Who said that? I used to say stardom was luck. I think this is interesting enough for you to listen to. Stardom is everything that happens to your career. Or luck. Luck is everything that happens to your career after someone picks you. In other words, you could get hired for a Broadway show and you'd be very excited. That Broadway show could go on and become Hamilton, or it could close during intermission of the first preview. That's luck. Had nothing to do with why they picked you. You get into a television show and you're all excited and you're texting everybody all over the place. I got a role in whatever it was. And then you find out the hard way that 90% of all television pilots don't even go on the air. And 90% of the ones that do go on the air don't even last the season. And 90% of the ones that last the season don't get renewed, and so on and so forth. Or it could become the next, I don't know, what's a TV show that you guys like? Stranger Things? Or... Look, you get into a movie. My God. And then it goes straight to video. Or it becomes the next Harry Potter. Luck is everything that happens. Luck is your career. It's everything that happens to you. It really is. After someone hires you. And if you think it has to do with hiring you, then imagine the casting director throwing the darts at the pictures. You understand? So I used to say all this and say, so stardom is luck, because it depends on what happens to these projects. And then I realized that Sarah Jessica Parker was the most unlucky kid I ever had, because she booked everything. Have you heard of her? Yes. She booked a bunch of movies. She was co-starring with Bruce Willis and a bunch of other stars. She booked a television series, limped along in the ratings in CBS for 2 years. She did a bunch of Broadway. Nobody ever knew who she was because none of those projects took off. So one day Ann Wright calls her up as her agent and says, you have an HBO pilot audition. And she rolls her eyes because she knows 90% of these things don't go on the air. But in those days, you could get Sarah Jessica Parker to show up for an HBO pilot audition because she knew that whatever happened to it, if she got hired, which statistically was very possible in her case, because she's amazing and books everything, they'll at least pay her $1,000 to shoot the pilot no matter what happens. When did Sarah Jessica Parker get lucky? When she booked yet another job? Or when that job became huge? Anyone? Where was the luck? Was she lucky because she got picked again? Or was she lucky because that job became a big hit? That's why I say luck is everything that happens to you after you get hired. But then I realized it was only a matter of time with her, because if you book more jobs, if you're more marketable, if you work on this concept of becoming somebody people want to hire, and you book more jobs, doesn't that increase the odds that one of them will take off? Which means you have some impact on the possibility of stardom. Just by becoming somebody that more people want to hire. You increase the chances that one of those jobs will take off. You book 5 jobs versus you book 15 jobs. Who has a better chance of one of those jobs becoming huge? You understand what I'm saying? Even stardom isn't luck. I just realized this like a year ago. It hit me. No, that's not exactly luck either. There's a period of luck with each project. You don't know what's going to happen to it. But in terms of odds, if you book a number of them, and booking them is not luck. Booking them is becoming somebody that they want to hire. Becoming somebody that people are going to root for. You do that, which you have a lot of control over, and you book more jobs, which is what will happen. You've increased the chances that one of them might take off. You've increased your chances of luck. I found that very interesting. How many of you are going to go home and start practicing some of this? Maybe? Because I can tell you this, if you do, you'll be glad. And if you don't, you wish you had. You know how I know that? Because most of you know at least one grown-up who has said at some point or another, I wouldn't mind going back in time and being young again, but only with what I know now. You kids can't say that. You have to say, if you don't follow this, like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you have to say, I did know. Some guy came in and told me all this. I didn't listen. How's that going to feel? You understand? When my words come back to haunt you. So for your sake, I hope that you act on this advice. And if you do, you'll be glad. And if you don't, you'll wish you had. All right. Before you leave, do take one of these, because these were my lecture points. And seriously, they're pretty profound stuff for kids. I mean, I express them in a way that I hope they get it, but you can put this up and remind you of what I said. This is all you need to do in your life. These are the most important things you need to do in your life. Among the most important things. Few things are more important than this. And this is a website I set up to help you avoid getting ripped off in Kentucky. Internet gossip boards, like anonymous, like, she's terrible, she was really bad, she's such a rip-off. Or modeling schools, talent searches, non-union agencies, pictures and portfolios, internet gossip boards, they're commonly called message forums, and other common misrepresentations. So you don't go and spend a lot of money on pictures or things you don't need to. I created this website because I used to talk about it, and it's boring for me to talk about it. So this is the good stuff that you should do. This is stuff you should not do. So whenever you leave, take that. And you need to hear this, because I want you to have the perspective here. If you followed all of my advice, you really did, you made it your business to become somebody people wanted to hire, and you went to work with your self-image and your eating habits and your social habits and your focus and all this, you understand? You didn't let anybody talk about it. Most of the time you go on auditions or interviews, they won't pick you. They'll pick you more than anybody else. And they'll pick you often enough to earn a living in this business. But most of the time, they won't pick you. Do you understand? Which means when I see somebody leaving after the interviews because they weren't picked, and the kid is really, hurt by that, mom's a little bent out of shape, my first thought was I was right. I probably shouldn't have picked her. Do you understand? Most important thing that happened to you tonight is the information you got. Remember at the beginning I said very few people have this? How many kids think you know more than 90% of the most qualified, well-trained, supposedly marketable people running around New York and LA, who all think it's just like that next lucky break. They're like, or who we meet, or it's Einstein. What do you say? Theory of insanity. People keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, thinking somehow it'll result differently. So in Einstein's non-clinical definition of insanity, 90% of all the actors in New York and LA kind of fit the bill. I know a lot of them. They're great people. I love some of them. I've known many of them for years, on both sides of that spectrum, the real successful ones and the ones that are not. But there's no exceptions to this. Even when somebody says, well, what about so-and-so? She's not following all your advice, and she made it into whatever. And I always say, let's wait a little while and see what happens. Kind of what this gentleman said, people get on Broadway. I said, let's wait a little while and see what happens. And sure enough, they crash and burn. And everybody says, if it's a young person, then everybody says it's the business. The business was unhealthy. Business isn't unhealthy. There's nothing unhealthy. Anything that happens in the industry that's unhealthy gets rooted out like that. These people are all supported. They want you to be good. They need you to be good. Do you understand? And we don't see you that often. How does interviewing and auditions become unhealthy unless the expectation of mom or dad is in the way? If mom or dad's expectation is that you're going to book a certain thing, and you know that you're disappointing them and letting them down, and feeling a little bit like a failure, then the audition process, the interview process becomes unhealthy. But going in for 5 minutes and reading a script for somebody, and then your phone doesn't ring, I don't know how else to say it. Oh well. You understand? You're going to apply for colleges. Guess what? Some of them might not pick you. You understand? Although I must tell you, if you follow the advice you got tonight, you got a better shot at getting into better colleges. You think a happy, healthy, focused, open person would do better at an interview for college than a person who's not? You understand? This is pretty universal stuff, guys.